This is Alice, and you are in Gothic Land. Very welcome to this last live event after is the 10th. So we've been doing 2 weeks solid live events to talk about the Gothic. But what is the Gothic? This is what we've been trying to do for 10 days. Define it, describe it, try to dissect it, try to classify it, try to put some kind of order so we know what it is, how can it help us. So this is what I've been trying to do for these 10 days. I hope that I have achieved some organization, some mental organization in your head, and that if you come from no idea point of view, you now have some idea what the Gothic really means and where it all starts. And if you already had some idea, I hope that you have enjoyed this, that you realize or that you remember things that you've forgotten. This has been like reminders. Basically, I'm just trying to create awareness. And by creating this awareness, I'm trying to help people, I'm trying to help you to go deep down your fears. I'm trying to help you go there in those areas, that space that you are uncomfortable, because from knowing who you really are, from knowing what your fears are, you can actually overcome them by facing them through the Gothic text. And this is going to lead you to wonderful things like finding out who your career path is going to be, where is it going to be a little bit more assertive when you are selling something, if you're selling online, or in your everyday life if you're having to speak to other people and you have this panic. So communication is important here too, because the way we communicate our fears is relevant in our everyday lives, depending on your job. So we just try to create this context where demystifying some ideas regarding the Gothic that maybe you had a little bit wrong, or you only had one part of it. So today, as I said, is the last episode of these 10 live events, and I was gonna do like a original, like a not original, no, like a conclusive day event. But actually, I was thinking that to wrap up, what best than actually talk about identity, and you're going to see why. Identity is something we have been mentioning. It's been present all along since the very beginning of trying to define the Gothic. And identity is, at the end of the day, what we need to find, what we need to figure out in order for you to move on. So I'm going to start by telling you, making some references. I'm going to, as always, I always use essays, books, other people's research, because I think that by doing that, you're going to see also that I'm not the only one talking about these things, that this is something that is still pretty new, but it's been going on only for the last 20 years, like been taken really seriously by the academia for not a long time. And since it's so new, I want to demystify some things, as I said before, and I want you to help. I want to clarify. I want to bring light to maybe people who have not got access to university courses, or that, like in my case, when I started, I had this intention, this idea, but I never go around it for different reasons. Life takes over, and it wasn't there at my reach at the time I was looking for it. So I found my way around it, and this is what I'm bringing you today. This is the conclusion of all that research, and it's it's something that is going on, and it's not going to stop here. But let's talk about identity, and why is identity so important in the Gothic, and why am I closing up with this today. So when we talk about, in the last past events, I've been telling you that the things that the Gothic allows you to do, and one of the main things that allows you to do, and from that everything else comes out, is that it helps you go deep into the rabbit hole, and it makes you dig out who you really are. So you can see this at different levels. We can see this at a very personal level, but also in relation to a group where you belong to, or that you might not belong to. So then we're going to have this otherness that we were talking about yesterday. So this group could be your family, it could be connected to social status, to your daily relationships, to your work, to your country and the history of the country. But above all of those is all about the perception of yourself. And obviously, the perception of yourself will have 2 points of view. 2 points of view. It will have your perception and how others perceive you. So, in this sense, I want you to consider the following aspects. So, think about how do you present yourself to others, and visually, how does that work? What are the clothes that you're wearing? What is the way you speak? What are the things that you do? Then the next thing I want you to think is who you truly really are behind the mask, behind the facade, behind the makeup, behind your nail varnish. How do you behave? But what is your inner self like? Are you shy? Would you rather not be talking to certain people at certain times? When people think, oh, you must be like that, and you think you got me completely wrong. What is your inner self really like? What is it that you're not showing that people misinterpret from you? And the third point I want you to consider is the fact that this is going to lead you straight away to dig down, to dig down your deepest fears, but also your worries, your anxieties. We're going in this kind of tunnel by doing this. First, the way people see me, the way I'm thinking I'm like, and then I'm going to start digging out. I'm going to be touching those areas I'm uncomfortable with. We have anxieties, we have hopes, we have desires, projects that maybe will perpetuate your influence in future generations. Identity is all about all those things. But if you look back again at the origin of the Gothic and Gothic literature, we're going to see, or you saw when we started dividing the periods and classifying and organizing the periods, that we had identity issues and perceptions that were different depending on the different times and the different periods. And that was pretty much because of the social constraints, because of the moral, because of the political situation, the religious situation of a country as well. Remember, I keep mentioning the Inquisition here. But also how stories were told and how stories are told. They give idea, they give you information about the identity of the writer, but also when the writer sends a message out there, it's also about your own identity. Do you recognize, do you identify with what the writer is telling you? Is this actually making you discover something about yourself that you didn't know before? All this is super important. So also think when women had to write on the pseudonyms or on the pen names, why was that? That's again identity. What is the perception of the reader, depending if the reader thinks that the writer is a man or a woman? All this again comes down to identity. So what we have here is we have inherited all those elements to. We are in this moment that Fred Bottin talks about, and he calls the after Gothic. So to concentrate on what's going on nowadays, considering everything we have inherited, I'm going to use, once again, I'm going to refer to academic, researcher, teacher, and friend, writer friend, Tracy Fahey, who wrote this fantastic book last year out in the market, and is the I Spit Myself Out. And at the beginning, the introduction of this book, you know that I love books when they come with intros from the writers, because then you can really see deep down what the real thoughts are. And one thing is what you interpret when you read it, and another thing is what the readers mean to do with their work. And here we have that, as in the other works, in the Unheimlich, she was thinking about Unheimlich maneuvers. She was thinking about Freud's theory of the Unheimliche. In this one, in I Spit Myself Out, I Spit Myself Out, she's talking about the influence that Julia Kristeva had on her, and how she actually created these stories around these ideas. Now, Kristeva is a French theorist, and what she talks about is the semiotic and the symbolic stages. And she does that precisely to talk about identification and therefore identity. So for Kristeva, this is what Fahey tells us. For Kristeva, the self is a liminal entity. During this process of abjection, its boundaries break down. It becomes a sire of contested territory. And in doing so, central ideas of identity, autonomy, and agency are called into question. So we have ourselves being questioned by others, but also by ourselves. So when I told you yesterday about this otherness becoming closer to us, this is what I was talking about as well. I was inferring this factor. I was referring to this concept of the self that Tracy considers, in her own words, the most important place that we inhabit on a permanent basis. And this is so true. We can't get away from our bodies. We can't get away from ourselves. So at the same time, this place that is our home, which is our own body, is the place that many of us are uncomfortable in. This is what Tracy says about her own body. And here's where the unheimliche comes again. So the self is also that link that connects our different selves throughout the different stages in our lives. And in doing so, we create history. So we have a past, we have our present, and we have our future. So we not just happen at one moment in time. We do happen at different moments in time, and we are never the same either. So we keep changing, we keep mutating. So as living organisms, we're probably the most Gothic elements of existing as an animals, but we are the only ones that we know of that we have all these deep thoughts. Even though nowadays we can see that animals suffer, have pain, they communicate the same as we do, but we are the most destructive animal on earth, as you know. So this is again very, very Gothic, if you want to take it that way and read it from that under that lens. So we are born, think about it, from the moment we're born is a traumatic experience. That's why scientists say that nobody can remember their birth, because it's a traumatic experience. We're born from another human body. Imagine this, and what happens to this body is horrific, really. It's atrocious when you think about how a baby is born. Is the mother's body has to go through that process to give birth to this alien life that, even though is her own, is alien to her. So, and I'm talking as a mother, so I know what I'm talking about. It's not I'm just saying it. So we are sent to this world that will shape us. Are we really a tabula rasa, or are we already determined by our genes? This is again another discussion. So we will become and we will continue creating changes depending on our experiences, our genetic determination, our frustrations, the way our bodies change, our age, illnesses, all those things that make up who we are going to keep reshaping us. So therefore our identity is never the same, it's always in motion. So all these are going to lead us to have to come to terms with acceptance at some point or another. It's either we accept our new identity and we're happy with that, or we reject it, and then is when we have to face the horror that we are going to be triggering, is when we are in that dark side that the Gothic will embrace. So this is a very important point, because what we do during that process is to actually express discomfort. And this is what we can do by writing stories. We can let this discomfort out, we can put it somewhere, and that is cathartic. Writing is cathartic, but also reading about someone else's discomfort that we can relate to can also be cathartic. So what can you achieve when you write or tell your story? So we have a positive side and a positive evolution, and we have a negative perception or involution. Well, I won't call it involution, but a negative outcome. So from the positive side, we have that you will reinforce your identity, and that will help you to keep moving on. Or you're going to keep up, then you will keep on evolving to be a better human being or happier with yourself. At a professional level, you will define better who you are, and this will help you find a better job, something you really enjoy doing. Sometimes the reward doesn't necessarily have to be economical. It could be that the reward that you feel is more on the lines of a self-rewarding experience that is going to help you then, as a consequence, to find a better job and to be happier in your everyday life, with your relationships, with your friends. But it can also have a negative perception or a negative outcome, like, for example, having this desire for self-destruction or even destruction of others. So, however, when we explore these uncomfortable spaces, what actually we are doing is writing ourselves. And by doing so, Fahid tells us, is that we take charge of this machine, steering it from the darkness of the past into a possible future. And this is how the Gothic can actually help you. It helps you to know yourself better, because it brings out all the fears that you have bottled up and makes you face them, confront them. By confronting these fears, then you're going to create awareness. When we create awareness, you take the next step and then you move on. So it's all like a chain. What happens when you move on? We have 5 things that can happen when you move on, and there are probably more, but the most poignant ones are that you'll be happier with yourself because your fears will not hold you back any longer. So anything that you want to take on will happen and you're going to be happy about it. You're not going to fear anything, or you reduce the level of fear and anxiety. The second point is that you will be able to make the right choices in your life because this fear is not going to get in the way. The third thing is that you will accept your limitations. So creating this awareness, you know where your limits are, but those limits don't have to be negative. They can turn into strengths rather than traumatizing experiences that are not going to let you move on. The fourth point that you're going to find is that you will find your very own and unique voice. Imagine that you are a writer, or you want to become a writer. By getting rid of those fears, you're going to start putting them down, and you're going to be more you, and you're going to be less worried about you're going to be saying, and that's when people are going to like you because you're going to sound more natural. It's going to be you with your own voice. And the fifth point is that opportunities by then will display themselves in front of you. So I think with identity, we can say that we get the general, why are we doing this about the Gothic? Why am I talking to you about the Gothic? At the end of the day, it's about you. It's about how you feel. It's about why do you have this attraction for the Gothic. If I think about myself, I've been attracted to the Gothic since I was little, just initially because I loved the horror space. I love the knowing why and why these things happen. I was fascinated about the supernatural. So all those aspects made me who I am nowadays. And by putting them towards one side, the only thing I've done over the years is just postponing the real person that I want to be, or the space where I want to be working and I'm happy with. So for me, as a language teacher, I love teaching the language, because in the language we can find all these tools to communicate the deepest feelings and fears. And I always love talking about feelings. But also, the language is really, really important because it shapes how you feel, it shapes your thoughts, or your thoughts try to find a way to be expressed by using certain vocabulary. Some languages allow you certain things and other languages allow you other things. So this is very, very nice. And when you're writing, like in my case, I also write articles about the Gothic, and I'm attempting my first stories. I've not published, but I've been writing for a long time, but I've not published yet. But all that process of embracing who you really are is very Gothic again, because you can avoid the dark corners, you can avoid feeling all these fears. So what I advise you to do, what I would recommend you do from now on, is to have a look at, or watch all the videos that we've had from before. Have a look at what we have learned. What have you learned so far? What has actually been the message that really got you thinking? What is it that from the Gothic you really like to know more about? And I want you to tell me. I want you to let me know. So remember, you can come to me. I've got my website, gothicalice.com, where you can download some free PDFs there. There's one about Gothic literature that I would like to actually replace for a longer one. But at the moment, there's something there for you to start from. You can also see other downloadables there that might be more into the communication space, that might be more useful for you. But also you can now book a free session with me, a free assessment, a session with me. Gothicalis.com. I will leave all the messages, all the details here below in the video when we finish. And with that, we can just talk. Tell me, how do you think the Gothic will help you? Did you ever think about all these things I've been telling you for these 10 days? What would you like me to talk about in future videos? Is there a course that you would like to take? How would you like, how do you see yourself in the future, in the near future, in connection with the Gothic? So I want you to tell me all that. And that's it for me, my friends. We've done a lot of things. We've been defining, we've been doing structures, giving you definitions, giving you the main elements. We've left a lot of things behind because in 10 days it's impossible to cover the Gothic that's been going on for 200 years. But I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that you feel like now you want to take some action. The Gothic can transform you, and in transformation you're going to see a lot of good results, and you're going to see a lot of beautiful things. It's not just for entertainment, but also how it can make you grow professionally in your own space, whatever that is. Okay, so if there are no comments, I will stop the video. I will stop now the live event. If watch the past ones, I will leave all the details I've been mentioning, and I hope you have enjoyed it. This is for me a pleasure being able to be here today talking to you, talking about my passion that I think is a lot of people's passions, but they still don't know that they have all these Gothic sides in them. So I invite you to explore it, and I invite you to embrace it because it's absolutely wonderful. So I see you next time. In the next 2 weeks I might be doing this again, but in Spanish version for all my Spanish followers. So if you want to listen again in Spanish and practice that, you're very welcome. So see you very soon. Bye bye.